jolly good time. Down the beach is there at Waikiki, and that's Mrs. Nancy. Come on, and more love down. Right there at Mrs. Nancy, and more love down. Here's God's story. Every mother swings a tail. Some quick as a bad habit, when it comes to with drunk. All they need to see is something you don't know it yet. Hold the phone, start in the rock. All I know you won't get it. I will be honky don't help you sleep. To an animal. More likely start to believe that the really deal must have been our fault. The people even us humble to receive. They keep us humble. Truly, I couldn't say that the facts bear witness to the truth. Do me a mistake. I ain't here to litigate the resurrected kanaka belief. What it makes is the constitutional scripture and the old politics of these people. They keep us humble. But what an evil way we, when at first we practice.
My name is Paul Lainui. We are here at Kamakakuo Kalani School of Hawaiian Studies, and we are here to talk about Hawaiian sovereignty and the many different ways of seeing Hawaiian sovereignty. Some people see it from what they call an internationalist approach, which is really an approach towards independence as the expression of Hawaiian sovereignty. Other people are suggesting that we should stay within the United States government. Other people are saying that we should try to see what achievements we can make within the state of Hawaii. So you have these three basic arenas of Hawaiian sovereignty and how we can basically grow the nation. I think anytime you get a group of people who are talking about Hawaiian sovereignty, it's a good thing. Although we may not agree with one another, I am thinking and I hope that what is happening now is that the movement is maturing to a point where we are not getting into arguments about why my position is right or wrong, but we are getting into a discussion of how we can join together and raise the whole nation, irrespective of how we choose to express Hawaiian sovereignty at one point or another point. I think the other hopeful thing about this discussion and what I think we will also mature into is this dichotomy between some words, some what I call the conjunction, the conjunction of or and the conjunction of and. You see, when you talk about or, you choose this or you choose that, then what it does is it divides you. You have to make a commitment to this position or that position. And what I'm saying is that in our discussion, we need to change the conjunction to and. Let me apply it to issues. Some people say, well, you have to choose between the Akaka bill or to be independent. You hear that word or in between? What it says is that you can either be this way or that way, but you cannot be both. For me, I support the protection of Bishop Estate. I support the protection of Department of Hawaiian Homelands. I support the protection of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. But that doesn't mean that I do not support independence. I also support independence. And that's why the term and has to be inserted and replaced instead of the term or. Now, some people may say, well, it's just a small word, but the small word is a mindset. It's a mind switch. And if we are going to mature, if we are going to talk about, we're not here to win an argument, we are here to raise a whole nation, then we have to make that mind switch so that we respect not necessarily the validity of everyone's argument. That would be nuts to do so. But we respect the integrity of everyone and recognize that they exist, that their thoughts exist. Although you may agree or disagree with their thoughts, the thoughts at least must be respected as a human being. That is your belief. I may not share it, but I respect that you exist and you have those thoughts. And I must incorporate you within the realm of what reality is and what Hawaiian sovereignty is going to be. So we need to grow, we need to mature, we need to be more patient, more allowing of other people to be participants. Only in that way are we really going to be revolutionary. Only in that way are we going to recognize that, hey, we're actually supporting one another. Even though I'm arguing about Hawaiian independence and I can go to the United Nations, I can go other places, I am still supportive and participating and want you to, well, give you all the support you are trying to do as you work in the taro fields. Only in that way are we going to, what is the word for it? We're going to invade the system, we're going to infiltrate the system, and we're going to be able to take up the parts that we need to take so that when the takeover comes, it would be a takeover where we're already in place, but with a common consciousness. So let's not argue about who's going to be king, who's going to be queen, whether it's your constitution, my constitution, and all that stuff. Just recognize that the nation is far greater than any of our arguments, far greater than any of us. And that is what our commitment has to be towards, to raise that nation. So, that's what
mahalo. If anybody would like to know any more about this, or have any other questions to ask you, is there a way they can get in touch with you, or email? Or?
Yeah. If you want to get in touch with me, email, and maybe you can run it on the screen later on, but it's PLainui@hawaiianperspectives.org. Or just give me a call. I'm in the phone book. Telephone number 697-3045. And feel free to call and we can talk more about this kind of stuff.
Wow, thank you.
It was an idea that was put together, and for a couple of years putting this together at the airport. I was the chair of the elections committee, and we came up with procedures and also an educational form that was already put together that was actually voted by the body, and it was accepted to be able to take these things out and start educating the masses of our people. Well, because of the previous Office of Foreign Affairs body, who was in control of the monies, it didn't fit in their plan. And what happened was they cut our funding, so it didn't happen. The coalition was ready to send everything and mail out everything to everybody who didn't participate, and it was not complete. So it's still there for us to go back and look at it. This is what I brought up was, let's go look at these two again, because this is what our people voted in. This is what our people said. It's not what we say. That's what they say. And so I think we should go back and at least look at these things that have already been done, so we don't recreate them. And recreate something, for another 40 years of doing this, so that we can use this as a stepping stone to at least get to a point where we can have our locals be represented by people from our areas and different islands. And that's what the coalition's job was to do, was to be an educational arm, not creating a nation, but allowing the education of it to be out there today and continue, because it was and still is our biggest priority, to be able to bring this, so they can make a conscious decision whether they want to be part of it or not. But for us not to be able to do this, I think is, just a waste of all that money and all that time when it's already there for us to go back and look. I'm not saying it's the perfect plan. I'm saying we should go back and open it up and look at it, so that when we do, maybe we need to allow it a little bit. Maybe we need to do something else. But at least don't go and try to recreate something that's everybody win.
I'm going to ask O'Connor here to talk a little bit about the AHA.
Thank you. Hello, I'm O'Connor, and just to make one correction, it really should be called the AHO. It's the AHA. AHA, of course, is getting together. The AHA Hawaii, or EB, is a name that we have given as the Native Hawaiian Convention. So we refer to it as the AHO. Where did this Native Hawaiian Convention come from? And of course, the question is always, where do you start from in history? And I won't start back in 1993. But about 1991, many of you may recall Hui Nahawau that started the education process, and out of Hui Nahawau, the feds came out with a confession that they called the apology resolution. The state also came out in the same year with a confession saying that they were eating down the overthrow. And as a result of that, many of you remember 1993, the gathering was the 100th anniversary. And so the state then formed the Sovereignty Advisory Commission. And out of that commission, 9 of us were appointed. We advised the legislature on how to address the issue of Hawaiian sovereignty. And out of that came the Hawaiian Sovereignty Advisory Council. And out of that were, I think, about 21 John did the appointment of the members of that council, although the legislature had named some organizations automatically as members of the council. The council essentially said, don't ask us on how to move the issue of Hawaiian sovereignty, because we are merely appointed by the state, which many of us did not recognize their appropriate jurisdiction. We said, we have to go out into the communities and ask the communities, what do we want to do in terms of moving this movement ahead? And so we went out to almost every Native Hawaiian community that we could find. Some of our members died in this process. We were attacked, we were accused, a lot of other stuff. So there was real vibrant stuff going on during that period of time. We decided that we would report to the legislature and say that according to our take for what the people want, they want to decide whether or not we should elect delegates to convene a meeting so that we can decide how we're going to move ahead and then propose to the Hawaiian people whether or not we will move ahead in sovereignty or just stay where we're at. The legislature said, okay, go ahead. We restructured and we held an election, not an election, a plebiscite, to determine the question, shall the Hawaiian people elect delegates to propose a form of Hawaiian governance? So that was the first step. We didn't just jump in and say, yeah, we'll do it. We went back to the people and asked them, do you want us to elect delegates? The majority voted. They said, yes, let's elect delegates. So then we went to the next step of electing delegates. We had 89 delegates elected from different parts of the islands as well as from America. In this process, what they said was, as long as you have a drop of Hawaiian blood, you can participate. Whether you're in jail, you're in the Pule House, you're in Switzerland or Zimbabwe, you can all vote as long as you can show your koko. But we also said we cannot establish ourselves as a genealogical board. So if a person declares that I am of that blood, we register them. If anyone wants to challenge them, let them challenge. And then we pull the list out and then we determine that challenge. Because otherwise it would cost us too much money to determine who was and who was not Native Hawaiian. We held that process, we elected delegates. I was elected from Huluhuli Valley out in Waianae, and we all got together and we started working on examining what was the international perspective, what was the internal perspective, what I call the integrationist approach, and we eventually came out with two separate proposals. I'm sorry, we didn't come out with two separate proposals. We were developing two well-defined proposals. One for independence and how we would structure the government and who would be the citizens of the nation and what would be the special place of the Poe Hawaii within the government structure. And the other one was an integrationist approach, which was essentially following the Akaka Bill model before Akaka Bill came out. As a result, or after that, what happened was the Akaka Bill came up. The straw vote that had been taken within the convention was generally, we asked this is not official, but how do you stand on it? And we had more people coming out with an independence favor rather than an integrationist favor. Now let me say that the people who were elected came from the full spectrum of political thought. We had people who were loyal to the American nation, who were heroes in the Second World War, in the Korean War, and we had others who were absolutely for independence. But it was a process of getting together, sitting down, studying, and then coming out with proposals. And then what happened was the rug was pulled out from under us. We then went to the legislature to overhaul, no more funding. Everything dried up. Today, the result is that we continue to exist. I have refused to adjourn the meeting sine die. We continue to hold that pattern, and members within the ARPO are waiting for us to come back. We need probably 2 more meetings in which we can finalize the document and at least meet our obligation to propose to the Hawaiian people a better government, whether it's one form, independence, or integration. And that is where the situation is right now. Thank you.
I'm just going to finish up and just say, look, you know, we're looking at a couple of initiatives here we're looking at a couple of initiatives here that actually had some momentum moving toward independence, that have the same kind of story. They were initially funded, they were encouraged, and then they were stopped.
I'd like to speak on behalf of Kalahuli Hawaii, and I am a citizen of Kalahuli Hawaii. We too have never given up our own constitution. Now, when Kalahuli Hawaii came to OHA to ask for money, OHA said, can't do it. There were conflicts at the time. Kalahuli had a constitution. We held 3 constitutional conventions that were funded entirely by Kalahuli, selling Portuguese sausage and bread and whatever it was. We got money from the Hawaiians on the continents to help us run our constitutional conventions. We had registered 20,000 citizens to our constitution. We opposed the efforts by the state to have an election, and many of you saw me on TV talking about that. So I just want us to remember that there is a long history, and the things that Kalahuli Hawaii proposed in 1995 are still very good for us to look at today. But when we start to look at and have this discussion and education going on, I would like to have the Kalahuli materials go out as well. I still have them in the storeroom here, Hawaiian Studies. John and I share the storeroom. And I'd like us to remember that this is something that's been ongoing. It's not as though that was the last thing. There were 2 opinions at the time, and I want to just speak to that. There were 2 opinions at the time. We felt we were forming a government in exile to go and ask for land. And we did ask for land. There's nobody got any land. But that's something I'd like to remind the historic record. Thank you.
So you see, this is exactly where we are. And I think a lot of people around this table can empathize with this. The movement toward government, toward our government, is complicated by a very, very difficult history. And part of that history is the history that the United States has had with us. Part of it is the history we have about ourselves. The issues continue to be, and I think we said them at the outset of this presentation, issues continue to be the legitimacy of the Hawaiian Kingdom government. On this, we agree. The fact that the United States, in our collective opinion, does not have a lawful right to control over our lands, our resources, or us. And third, that putting together a government, an independent government, now is going to have to take into account all of the different kinds of experiences and histories that we bring to the table, including a concern for indigenous rights, including a willingness to engage with the United Nations, and including a strong desire to be as sovereign as we possibly can be, resting our sovereignty on laws and nations. It's not an easy conversation. It's certainly not something that can be done in a day or a week or a month. But one of the things that we're really clear about is we go forward now with or without the support of agencies like the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. But I'm telling you, and this is something we all believe, this movement for independence is getting stronger by the day, regardless of the help that we get from funding agencies. And we're really saying, it's time for you guys to jump on. The education that comes from this kind of group is not going to be something, a single kind of education. It's going to be broad, diverse, it's going to include all kinds of different ideas and approaches, and it's time to get on. Thank you.
My name is Austin. I have the privilege of facilitating the, we're now called the domestic group, the combination of the federal and state recognition rooms. And so I was asked to frame and describe the discussion that we had yesterday with a little bit of information about how that was the marriage of two separate conversations at the previous summit. And then my job is really to sort of set up the frame, and then our participants will share as they want to. All of them, I hope. So basically when we kind of began our conversation, we were looking at how to combine the discussions of the federal recognition room from the previous summit and the state recognition room and put them together in a useful conversation today, yesterday and today. And so basically what I'm going to start by sharing is kind of the themes of the conversation, what was the intention, when did we begin. And I think just to sort of say there was a shared foundation of folks that I don't think anybody in the room by the end of the conversation, or even at the beginning of the conversation, thought that any of these levels of recognition was in and of itself sufficient, if that's a reasonable word. And so we got to spend some nice time talking about what each of them did afford toward the big vision end, and what it lacked also. We got to talk a little bit about those things. And so I think from the beginning, the understanding was that, and really from the video that we all watched yesterday, talking about the expression of individual Hawaiian self-determination in all aspects of our lahui already was a foundational thing that we were able to have folks share about their work in those places and how those things are impeded in today, you know, in terms of their ability to fully express how they would educate a Hawaiian child if they had none of these restrictions and challenges related to assessment and those kind of things. So we were able to kind of have some sharing about those kinds of initiatives, so the places and the specific institutions of a lahui, and how those things are limited or challenged today. There's lots of folks that sharing that they felt like they were stuck in the weeds, and that always there was this parent-child relationship that they were having to engage in discussions at the state and federal level to clear up barriers to be able to express the program services and care of the lahui in the way that they wanted to. And so we saw that as foundational to our conversation, as in understanding that if we are talking about these different models, how do they serve that end of making that better? And so that's kind of, I think, the jumping off point for the conversation was about whether or not our people would be better off, and how would it be better for the folks that are doing that work every day to be able to do their jobs, or the radical paradigm shift that needed to happen so that they could do it in a way that was from a culturally determined place, from a value-driven place, versus from trying to make it fit in a Hawaii something Western kind of way of doing things. And so with that in mind, at both levels there was this discussion about, the framework that I'm going to use is a framework about the idea of external recognition and then relationship. And there was a very, very helpful frame about that concept, about that in each of these levels there was an attempt toward recognition and disentangling the idea of working out the relationship, so how the government would relate to, how our government would relate to the U.S. government thereafter was seen as a second step in terms of working out the details of disentangling what were the lands and holdings of our Maui and the things from the state and from the federal as well, and talking about in that sequence of things with recognition and relationship following thereafter, that at the relationship phase, which is, at the recognition phase, which is where we're at right now, even in that place, that emphasis on education and there are all these words for the same thing, which is educating and changing people's perspective of this effort, of the value of this, of the rights of indigenous people. The words were public relations, lobbying, educating our lobbying. There's all these different words for it, but the idea being that, and we spend a lot of time talking about what specific strategies would be helpful in moving our Oahu and our people toward understanding and acceptance of this initiative now, getting them to believe and try again in terms of being willing to kind of hang in there. That it's been 20 years since, and then 100 years before that, and how to kind of keep the faith of the people and those kind of things. And so we talked specifically about strategy related to giving them examples of things they could already understand, that they were okay with, that were so talking about things like native gathering rights as something that already both Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians have a high degree of acceptance about, and so that there were, we were specifically talking about strategy related to how to ease people into understanding and accepting the value of these, the value of this, of honoring the rights of indigenous people. Before we get into the specifics about whether or not they're going to lose their house, that stuff we felt like was probably counterproductive to the initial discussion about this is something, a right that should be acknowledged. And so that was sort of the first place that we talked about under that. The flag of recognition, and yet there was this strong acknowledgement that in fact even when the Lahui is formed, and even when when it exists, there will still continue to need to be this ongoing education and relationship both with all of our communities as well as with the folks that we are trying to disentangle from. And so there was a lot of discussion about needing to maintain in that sense. So because we had the state and federal conversation going on at the same time, we were able to talk about maintaining, or the value of maintaining discussions and building relationships with folks at all levels. So there are executive level, sort of conversations between heads of state, kind of level of conversation at executive office on the U.S. side, but then also all of those departments at the federal level, and then within those departments, kind of all the sub-levels. Then you get to the state, and similarly that way with the state and the county. That all of those levels of engagement now are necessary. Because at the time of, or as we move toward our external recognition of the kingdom or of our nation, that we would need still the cooperation of the board to work to disentangle from those things and build out and work out a lot of details. And so there was this thought that effort toward working on those things now. So for example, there are specific acts at the federal level that folks are operating under right now and maintaining relationships at the federal level. To build cooperation and reduce barriers, and that those relationships would still be necessary and helpful in the disentanglement process and in the going forward, knowing then how to implement things. There was a lot of discussion about if state recognition, for example, when that piece, if that were to move ahead, what would that do in terms of allowing Hawaiian education to exist and express itself as it wants to? And there was a fair amount of agreement that it could go a fair way toward reducing some of the regulatory assessment, evaluative strength of the state. And yet, there was this recognition that as long as there were these federal funds or mandates, there would still be regulatory things that education would be subject to. And so, talking about how even as at one level we would acknowledge that even at a federal recognition level, let's say that there was just some, whether at that level, there would still be, if we look at other tribes or other peoples in the world, how they engage and how they interact with the, their former colonizer, seeing the way that regulatory power tends to come with funding streams, and that understanding how, as we disentangle those, it's going to have implications for really, are we ever going to be able to fully express them, really kind of pointed to that idea of these are steps forward, I think, and that each one moves you with some of the things you want and some of the things you don't. I think this is what we kind of left off. That's a fair way to describe that. Okay. So I just want to jump in there. Did I miss some big areas?
One of the things that came up that I'm sure you wanted other people to because we Allah and other efforts were mentioned. I shared yesterday that this is not the first attempt. Well, one of the things that I brought up yesterday is that this is not the first attempt at this, and when we are out there enrolling people in the Hawaiian movement, that we have to be sensitive that our people, we're asking them to validate themselves again, who they are. And if we haven't broken their spirit yet, we may lose credibility. So I think that the effort is, what we do now is crucial in here.
You use the dog game.
As we go out and do outreach, also I pointed out who is noticeably absent, who we don't have here. And I think part of the problem is that we're doing this during the week and people work. Because as much as the coalition has its issues, they do have big attendance every time, and it was always on Saturdays. And yes, we'll have to invest in money to bring people in, but there's a lot to be said for that because we're engaging a lot more people. We have a lot of grassroots people too who have that effort in the environments and from the continent as well. But I just wanted to point that out. I personally think that right now it's critical that we have to start moving on things and stop discussing because this is the fourth round already. Going around. And I think the new money is here already. It's starting to get that's
when we talked about our common history as the foundation from which to build our work and also our common deep culture. And in our discussion, FOCOP provided a nice framework which we wanted to share, which we all embraced. And again, it started off with our goal is to raise a nation based upon this common foundation and this common history and this deep culture. And what we want to do is focus on the field of possibilities. And as we're looking at our efforts at the state, the federal, and the international level, that rather just than say we should do the state initiative or the federal initiative or just international, that we should say and we should work at all levels simultaneously, the state level, the federal level, and the international level. And okay, and then his suggestion is that we ask the people these 3 questions that we added on a 4th. Do you support the Hawaiian Nation to be recognized within Hawaii, within the state of Hawaii, yes or no? Do you support the Hawaiian Nation to be recognized within the United States, yes or no? Do you support the Hawaiian Nation recognized within the international context, yes or no? And to ask our people those three questions. And the 4th was added, do you support a Native Hawaiian indigenous nation recognized within an independent, more inclusive Hawaiian nation state? So that the idea being that we start now to work on our recognition within the state and within the existing U.S. framework, but that nation would continue to exist as an autonomous Native Hawaiian nation within an independent nation. And the independent nation of Hawaii would be a multi-ethnic nation, but within that there would be the autonomous Native Hawaiian nation. So the idea that we discussed was to take the notes
So I think what the group had articulated was that we recognize that people have concerns that these don't necessarily go together. For example, whether or not the appearance of acquiescence can have international movement. However, some folks in our group brought up a really good point that perhaps we need to be clear about how we're moving forward domestically. And of course, there's an argument that domestic law can't possibly interfere with international law. And I think the real conversation was focused on understanding the risks of pursuing each avenue and not pursuing each avenue. So that kind of, the suggestion that there needs to be more research on the interaction, like legal interaction, is something that we need to look at. So, I mean, in summary, the idea is to dream of the possibilities and continue working on that. And obviously, we didn't have the pleasure of listening in on all the rooms, which I think may have informed our conversation a little bit more. So that's something that we can think about and bring back when we reconvene. Because I know, for example, in the international, I think some of the discussion there could have informed whether or not there would be conflict moving forward on each avenue. And finally, there were a couple other points that we really just wanted to share. The folks believe that there's the ability to recognize, and I think you guys brought that up previously, that the work of the locally self-governance is happening in the community now. You know, our people haven't waited. We're trying to educate our children. We're trying to improve the health conditions of our people. We're trying to better manage our resources, whether it be on the ocean, the land, or and as well as our water resource. We're trying to maintain our traditional knowledge and our ties with our family, whether or not they're here with us now, or have come before, and we think it's important to try to figure out how to bring those people into this type of conversation, because they're really doing the work of the lobby itself. And I recognize that so many of the people around the room are those people as well. And then finally, Polka shared with us, I mean, this is really his kind of, and by the way, they were advocates for state, federal, and international recognition, assertion in our room, so it's a lively conversation. But I think I wanted to just end with his suggestion that we need to dream about the possibilities of the lobby, and I think he really focused on ensuring that, and this is in line with what John talked about, deciding if we want to found our society, what values we want to found our society upon, that's going to guide our political, educational, environmental systems. Because the society that we're living in now isn't necessarily consistent with Hawaiian values. And an exercise and discussion on this would provide an opportunity for trust building, I think, which was kind of Leela's suggestion. Essentially, that perhaps the next time we meet, there could be exercises for that, and I think that kind of echoes a little bit about what the International Filter is saying. I think that pretty much summarizes it. If I missed anything, Dan, please feel free to step up.
I think one thing that really came out a lot is the way that the generations differ. You know, I think we're in the top generation. The younger ones are tired of that. They want some action. So I think we need to start focusing on that. And what I did suggest was that we have schools on each island where we can teach our children customs and traditions and protocol, because many of them don't have that. You know, I wasn't raised Hawaiian. I wasn't. I learned later on how you go to the ocean, how you act, but many of our children don't know that. And unless we start teaching the younger generations, they're going to lose that. And as we're giving them pride in their traditions and customs, then we can also talk to them about Lahui and their parents, because they're going to be involved, and their grandparents. So all of the generations will be brought together on a project like this, and it needs not to be Oahu-centered. It needs to be on every island, because always the neighbor islands are left out of things. They need to be as important as Oahu.
I'd just like to underline one idea that I've had. You know, I've been involved in the Hawaiian sovereignty movement for a number of years, and I think I participated in getting caught up with coming together and essentially getting into arguments about why my position is right and the other person is not correct. And perhaps this is part of my own reflection, but what we need to do is mature and get beyond merely the argument of whose position is right or wrong. But I think what we need to do is recognize the integrity of the reality that everyone has their own position, and we need to respect the integrity of everyone's position, whether or not we agree with it or not. And we cannot move the Hawaiian sovereignty movement only until we all agree to one point or another point, because we're going to be in the same position that we always have been in. Our objective is not to be right on an argument. Our objective is to raise a nation. And if we raise a nation, we all have positions to play. Every one of us has to respect the integrity of everyone else. And only in that case can we create the revolution that is needed to infiltrate
all of our systems, whether it's in the international arena, in the state arena, in the taro patches and all that stuff, we need to create a revolution of the mind. Later on, we can talk about the details. Well, we're going to have a governor, a mayor, a king, a queen, and all that stuff. Those are manini stuff. We need to overcome our own areas that we stuck in. We need to develop that maturity. Sometimes I place it in terms of the distinction between that small conjunction, the distinction between and or. We've all been involved in a debate. Are kanaka bill good or bad? You support integration or you support independence? And what we have done is we have divided our own people up with that kind of conjunction, either this or that. I support the protection of Hawaiian homes. I support the protection of Bishop Estate. I support absolute independence. Why split me up into a conjunction of choose one or the other? As a human being, as a boy in Hawaii, I am an and person. I can be this way, I can be that way, and it's not for you to stand in judgment of me on how I stand in that position. Let us switch the conjunction from now on. You support independence, fine. You support integration, fine. But can we get together? We all know what the end story is. We all support independence, but how are we going to get there? In the meantime, we don't want to lose all of our rights. We don't want to lose all of the stuff that we have gained. And all we need to overcome that is to be respectful of one another, respecting the integrity of each one of our leaders. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Work with our law students and law students to really research the implications of having Native Hawaiians, Native Hawaiian nation recognized within the framework of U.S. law, and what would be the impact on the long-term vision and goal of reestablishing the Hawaii nation within the international arena. And really research, does one contradict the other? And if they cannot, then we should be able to seek both at the same time. And it's just a matter of pacing and short-term and long-term goals, not either or, but seeking both. The status of our people and to protect our entitlements, as well as the long-term goal of a multi-ethnic nation state of Hawaii be established and recognized internationally. Mahalo.
There's some people who want to share that they at least have our
Okay, maybe we'll have a seat for people to walk so we don't have to. Thank you very much. the microphone. So they can walk in.
I wanted to mention that part of the things that we talked about this morning was engaging the non-Hawaiian in our state to support, because in reality, this is an inclusive movement. It's not us against them. It's an inclusive movement. But about 13 years ago, I participated in a project that was funded by the American Friends Church. And it was based on what we call discussion circles, which was a solidarity movement in homes during the 1800s, I believe, for the labor movement. What they did was, the subject was Hawaiian sovereignty. And each circle met with 10 against sovereignty, 10 for sovereignty. And it was a mixed group of Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians, and from diverse backgrounds. And the rules of the engagement was that whatever was said in that place was protected, and everybody agreed not to share it outside of the circle. So it was pretty much no holds barred, and everybody would discuss how they felt about sovereignty. It was actually a really valuable exercise, and I hope that's something OHA will consider, because I thought it was worthwhile, and it might be worthwhile visiting, bringing in, especially because there's a lot of new young people that have read about the movement, but haven't actually seen the movement themselves. But from this, they had a report. I personally found it pretty astonishing that even highly educated people, what they were saying in the room about sovereignty, against sovereignty. There's a lot of fear involved. And I think part of the process of this discussion circle was to take the fear away and try to understand even the opposing view's position. It also actually makes your position stronger of what you're trying to articulate out there in the community. But hopefully, OHA will consider some project like that. I just wanted to share that.
I'm Jiho Abad, the Director of Community Engagement at OHA, and one of the hopes that we had coming out of this session was to take the next step regarding one of the efforts that a bunch of the folks around this circle have engaged in. So I think it was, let me give you some background, and then I'll work my way into sharing what some of the folks have been involved in and what we hope to continue. I guess in 2007 or 2008, OHA called together a number of entities involved in the independence movement to get a better understanding of what was going on that front. And there were some discussions, I don't know exactly how detailed they were, I understand there were a number of meetings over the course of like 2 years or so, and Trustee Mossman kind of coupled that in some way. And that Kuleana was taken on by Trustee Lindsay thereafter. And so he's been very vigilantly continuing these monthly meetings of those, everyone who was invited at the time, in 2007 or 8 meetings, they were continued to, the invitation was continually there to take part in these monthly meetings. And over time, of course, as things naturally go, the group dwindled down to the truly serious and the truly, the ones who have the time and have to have the commitment and the ability to continue the conversation. And one of the themes that came out of that was a theme that we heard today, and that is the need for education, to continually share with our alumni and the larger public what it is that we stand on. When we say that we have, that seeking sovereignty is appropriate and lawful and is a good place for us to go, why is that? How is that? And so this group got together and we've been meeting to consider some ideas of what form of this education be. And of course we know that education will take many forms and will require every single one of us to be involved in that effort. But here's one aspect that we have proposed. And it's a series of some of these are stapled in some of these ones. So what the hope for outcome of this short part of our discussion is to just share this with you folks. And if in an optimal situation, and I hope we have one today, that a number of you will come forward and say, yeah, I want to take part, I want to be involved in helping with this education effort. So let me first explain who is involved in creating these ideas. The folks that met regularly on this included Lennis Ragsdale, Sterling Ng, and Kitty Makikau. So this is the work of the group. Now, beyond that, though, we came back to Trustee Lindsay's monthly meetings and Camera and Poka Lainui, G Razor were all involved in continuing to refine this. So this is where we last left off. Also at the table were Brianne and Trustee Lindsay and Mehana. So a number of folks got some good manao in on these. So as you can see, the purpose of this educational effort is to, like I said, educate our locally about that foundation, that kapua that we stand on when we say that sovereignty is appropriate and lawful and it's a good thing for our people, a good thing for Hawaii. How is that so? To gain support of the general public and to illustrate very significantly the agreement that we have among everyone who's interested in some form of sovereignty regarding these foundational aspects of why we stand where we stand. So the thought is that we create, understanding the context that we live in today, where people get information in short bites, and information is shareable, and it's one of the most powerful ways of getting it out, is that it is shareable, especially in social media networks. So creating a number of, as the group calls it, vignettes, 15 in total, short bites, that you could have lived independently or string together as a full-length sort of 60-minute documentary. The content would relate to achieving those goals above, and then you see the content outlined below. It's a long project. It'll take a lot of us to put this together. The thought is it's going to be interviews with experts like yourselves, strung together very artfully with appropriate B-roll to keep it interesting, to keep it moving, and to really focus in on making these big points. So you see 1, 2, 3, and 4 include, those are the big messages that the group thought were important to convey via the green specific pieces. So actually the green items that would be the specific 15 vignette pieces. So this is what the group is proposing, and we hope that it's still in the valuable stage, but certainly a lot of good work went into it from the group, and we hope that you folks would be perhaps interested in helping it along by being an interviewee or by helping to frame the outline more specifically. Thinking about even the B-roll, what do we use to keep this engaging for our elderly? And then even in the roll-up, how do we do this? Once we have the 15 pieces, how do we launch it? How do we share it to make it have a huge impact once it gets out there? So at this time, I think really we just wanted to introduce the idea. I know we're not really set up to have a discussion about it and to have everybody sign up and the like, but we will continue to follow up on this, and we invite conversation about it. I would love to, I invite anybody to converse directly with me, and I think Brianna and I can think about, how do we move this particular idea forward from the overall perspective. Any quick questions right now?
I just want to say that when Navajo Lino came, I was overjoyed. At last there was a radio station where Hawaiian people could come and talk. And they came from every part of the community, all over we could call them and talk, so that finally people could hear what Hawaiians were about. From way back in the beginning, I was 5 years old, 87 years old, 8 years old. Generally, I was thinking the Japanese, thinking the Chinese, thinking the Filipinos, until this day. We never had Hawaii. All these years, the Hawaiians did not
forget history, and I think those are important. But to tell the truth, I'm getting older every day, and I want land. And I want a discussion of land, and what lands we want, and how we use land, and how we live on the land, and how we build our schools on land, and how we take our children out of racist building schools. I want land for my grandchildren. So that's a topic that I think ought to be in a vignette. That is part of what brings me to these meetings when I can do somewhere else and make money. You know, we can't afford land in our own country. We don't have access to ocean. We're ocean-going people. Lucky 1% of us get to be on the ocean. We don't have my homes. It's run by the state. We need a land base that we can run, and that's what's going to get people to sign up for any kind of role. And if there's no promise of land, nobody's going to sign up for nothing. Why bother? I mean, really, I signed up. You know why? So, we have to really talk about that. Right now, people are suffering. They're houseless. We have people living with, three families in one house. Each person gets a bedroom, plus all the children are in that bedroom. And you got brothers and sisters and parents and 4 generations living in one house, which is almost, that's really a fetch. And everybody is living paycheck to paycheck. Land is the issue. We have plenty of history things. I mean, I love it, it's good. But why do we spend money? I want to talk about land and how we can live upon the land to make our culture survive. And for us to survive, and for us to bring our cousins home, the 45% of the white people that are outside of the continent, let's bring them home. Let's survey them and see where they want them home. Let's go to the state of Illinois and say, we want to control our land base. This is a trust, and you're not doing anything for the trust. You're abusing the trust. So that's an issue I would like to see come up on TV, on radio, and I don't want to pay for it. Thank you.
Jolly good time. Down the beach is there and Waikiki, and that's Mrs. Nancy. Come on, have more love down. You are there to ask Mrs. Nancy. Have more love down. Hey, this gospel. Every word swings the tail. Some quick a bad habit, whether some smoke with drunkers, all them you see something right. You don't know it yet. Hold the phone, stop and you know what. More likely you won't get it. We be honky don't help you sleep. Chewing at the mouth. More likely start to believe that the village here must have been our fault. The people even us humble to receive. They keep us humble. prayer. Who do you think that the kingdom cannot come back before Jesus Christ returned for all the sinners? Swatting over here, what illusion would you prefer? Set your soul free. Or Santa Claus in the sky, or Christian value of 1893. Or Santa Claus in the sky, or Christian value of 1893. I'll tell you. Jolly good time. Down the beaches there at Waikiki, and that's Mrs. Nancy. Come on, have more love down. You are there to ask Mrs. Nancy. Have more love down. Hey, this gospel. Every word swings the tail. Some quick as a bad habit, whether some slow with drunk, all them